Hello and welcome to this episode. I'm Chris Simmons, the Learning Enthusiast, and today I'm going to talk about using Lightburn and my process in general of prototyping, designing, and reverse engineering products, and using Lightburn to do all the designing and the building of the products. So there's a few different things you can do with, with knowing knowledge and stuff of Lightburn, but even before Lightburn, even just thinking. So thinking how things are made, how things are put together, and kind of dissecting that into pieces. But one of the things I'll start with first that's a good tool to have when you're looking at building something or prototyping or doing something is having a caliper. So in case you want to make something, you have something that you want to make in wood or acrylic that exists in the real world, whatever it is. Maybe it's a phone holder. Maybe it's a phone holder for your iPhone or something. You want to measure your iPhone, right? You want to measure things out. This will accurately can give you inches or millimeters, depending on what you want to work in. And this, I'll put a link in the description for this. Is an eye gauging caliper that I got on Amazon. So when you talk about designing, a couple of things, I did a thing on designing a G-scale shed, so a smaller shed for a garden railroad. So that's something like this. You could do the way I did it was taking real world measurements and scaling them down to 1/24 scale. So that's what I did here. But you could also, if you have an existing structure that you want to copy into wood, you can just measure it with the calipers as I showed and kind of remake it. Now, there's many things that I always see and get ideas, or how can I take something and change it. A good website for different things is boxes.py. It's a Python-based online website where you can design. They have many different things you can design, right? So many different things you can design. And what I would say is that you can use it to make a box if you want, or even take that box and then make it. So when I made this was done using a box as the basic for it from there. But in there you can do other things, and I'll show you. I wanted a K-cup holder for my Keurig cups, and I made this. You can see it. It didn't come out perfect, so that's another thing we'll talk about in prototyping. But what I did is I found a design on that boxes.py that was it was more of it was like that, but it was shelves. So I basically, you'll see how I took it and changed it. I'll go over that in a second. Here's another box design. I wanted to make a toolbox, and I was able to, this was the size I wanted. So what I did is, if you see this, the bottom, I just copied these bottom part and put here because I wanted to have this little section here so I can have a top area. And I did over the top, or on the top type, I did a certain box top that I put hinges on. And then I took from another thing. So it's always good, go on the web. You can find other things that you can then repurpose or find free designs. I found a free design that for a different little box, jewelry box or so. And then I made I added this to this design. So I'm basically combining two designs. So let's look at what we did in the Keurig. Let's go over to the Lightburn, and you can see that this is the front part, but original design where these were shelves for a paint, for holding paint. So it was something to hold. So that was little paint like acrylic paint or tempera paint or whatever paint, little things. And you could change these things here. You could change the diameter of these holes, and you can decide kind of the height and stuff. So this was just off the top of my head. I mean, I did measure some K-cups for diameter, but in the original design out of boxes PY, I don't know if you can see this. I'll try to zoom on this part. It had it straight up. Was not how it was actually. This isn't the original, but in the original, and let me just I can ungroup it. In the original, ungroup it. In the original, this was like this. So it had vertical, not vertical, it had this horizontal. So what I did is, you can see I turned them. Now I put in this other section here, if I can get it to zoom in. Here. What I did is I made it with a slight bend backward a little bit. I put a little bit of rotation, just because if you have it straight up and down, the K-cups will just fall out. So I didn't want to do that. So you have this. So it worked perfectly because everything was made to line up and fit. So you worked the way I wanted to, as you saw. The only thing I found after making it, and this is for me anyway, so I didn't care so much, was I needed some better spacing between these K-cups because they tend to hit each other. They fit in here, but they overlap just a tiny bit. So if I was to redo it, either in Lightburn or in the boxes PY, I would make this taller and make sure the spacing was a little bit better. I could do that here too if I wanted to. There's a couple ways to do that. So just off the top, we could use a tool like this measurement. So what's really good is you have a lot of measurement tools in here. You could then find out, this is 244 millimeters. What we would do is we would make something that's about the same. Watch this, 244. And depending on what heights we might want. And here's a good, take this crosshair and you can snap it right to what you want. Do that again here. And then we can then probably, now there's some other things we'll have to do, but see, now I made this taller, and then if I ungroup all this, I could basically move this up and get my spacing. Now, what are we going to do here that we have extra, we're going to have to put some spacing, and we might have to make this taller. So that's all trial and error, right? So that's something that you have to look at, trial and error wise when you're doing design and doing prototyping. There's a thing called reverse engineering that I kind of mentioned as well, and that's just taking something that's already made or something that you've seen, like you've seen someone else's thing, that what they did with their laser, what they built, but they don't show you everything, like the steps, the sizing or so. So you have to kind of reverse engineering. You have to kind of look at it and see how do you think they did it, and then try and do that as well. Go back and reverse engineer that, which is commonly done in a lot of technology. You know, competitor has something and you basically kind of reverse engineer it, change it so that you're not infringing on their patent if they have one. And usually this cases makers, there's no patents or anything like that, and you can easily take something they might have done and make it better, change it for your thing. Do not take their, you know, digital design and then resell that. But usually you can also buy a lot of these, but I would recommend also just prototyping and doing this, because you can then iterate, make things better. You learn how things go together. And lasers are very interesting in that way. And here's another thing I've made before, which is a tray. I saw someone do this, but this is also from boxes PY, where I took a box, didn't do the top, then I cut out this little curve in Lightburn, and I did all this too. So that's one of the things I was able to do. Let's see if I can this design anywhere. So that was very easy thing to then do. Let's go real quickly to that. Okay, let me bring it so it's in the middle. So basically you can see this is the floor part, this is the side. So I made the side and put in a little slot. I think it's a little bit longer than I wanted, but this was just the side that I took a circle, you know, an ellipse, and made it whatever I wanted this kind of arc to be. Let me see if you can see that. This arc to be, which you can choose whatever you think looks good. And you can design these boxes differently in box PY to have a taller sides. But you just have to do two of the sides and then copy them, and then you have all four, right? So you can have this. So it's pretty easy in that way. So I just like trying to take things and just come up with ideas. And here, another thing I'll show is I wanted to make a business card holder. So I took a design, and I'll show you the original design that I took and modify. It's for as you can see, it's for a post-it note holder. So I took this and scaled it up in my design, and I made it taller, and I made it the right width and everything. So I measured my business cards too, so to make sure that I could get something that was a little bit bigger that would fit. Now the front, in the software, the boxes.py, they do not have this where it goes together. So in Lightburn, I took and I made this piece. Now when I first did it, it didn't line up completely, so it didn't work. So I had to redo it, make sure it's the right width and everything, and then kind of make sure these tabs and these holes lined up. And that was pretty easy to do in Lightburn. So let's show some tips in the Lightburn real quick. So we'll go back into Lightburn. I'm gonna do a new some things to know in here. So in Lightburn, and I'll show you kind of what it did there too with the thing. You can do a few things. You can do a circle here. If I hold shift, and I don't know yet if what I want. Maybe I want it longer. So this is kind of the cut I want. There's a couple ways you can do this. You can use the Boolean tool. You can also use the cut tool. I don't know if you can't see my thing, but if I do it right, we'll make this. Let's see if this will work. No. Sometimes it doesn't work, so that's why you have to try the other tool. If we do our Boolean, see, that's the combine. We can do this one. That will take it away. So there you have this. And of course, I would have made sure that I would have had it centered or something too. That's another tip, is to always, if you want to have this in the right spot so that it's equal. So I just did that, and then you hit the Boolean tools. Sometimes it won't work the first click. You have to undo and redo it. So here's like if I was doing a tray or something. Another tip in general is how to use some of these things here. So you have these things here, and I'm going to make this relatively the same size. Maybe I'll make it the same height. I'll copy that, and I'm going to. So what I want to do is I'm going to combine these. So like this is your move tool. So this will move the whole thing. These will resize. This resizes and does rotate. This resizes. You have skew, these skew areas, but you can move it by any place where this crosshair is. You can move it. And I like to use this because it guarantees if I move it like this, it will snap to the place. And if I want these edges to line up exactly, I can do that. They snap together, and now it's combined. They lined up. So this works great for if you're doing slot box joints, any kind of thing you want to do. There's some way you can watch my video on box joints, so that is really cool. Or if you're just trying to combine things, make stuff longer, or just. So now I did this. So Lightburn in general is a very cool tool. Another tool I want to quickly show, and you can't really see it, but it's in the menu under Tools. It's called Deform Selection, and you can now have all these little points that you can mess around with or make if you want to make a shape that maybe you can't do easily. And it's pretty cool if you want to. If you're trying to, you can do this for anything. It can be an image, it can be something. So if you're trying to put something on something that's shaped odd, you can even shape your style, whatever you're working on, to be on. So you're going to get all these kind of curves that you wouldn't normally be able to do with just the circle tools and the X and the stuff. So you can make something that's really different. So I like doing that. That's a cool tool that I found. So, but most of the stuff I'm doing is usually pretty straight line, pretty much the way it's usually squares and circles and things. So, but I like to do things in Lightburn versus, so I want to talk a little bit about the other tools that exist that you can use. You can use Adobe Illustrator, you can use Inkscape, you can use Kittle, Canva to design things. But when you bring them into Lightburn, it's very critical. What happens is that it may not work, right? It has a drop shadow, has certain elements that don't translate over into your laser. So you can't make that work. You have to modify it in Lightburn. So it's always good to design in Lightburn first if you can, because if you design in Lightburn first, then you kind of can know how to do things and how to layer things, how to do things. So learning Lightburn is really important. I'd say there's some really good stuff on YouTube. Check out At the Tinkerverse. I'll put a link for his channel. He's very good with Lightburn, Carl, and I believe he even maybe have worked on the Lightburn, programming it, developing that software. I believe he was one of the first people working with the Lightburn, software to develop it. So he knows his stuff. He knows all stuff. I've learned a lot just looking at some of his stuff. There's another one I'll put, Made Better with Knowledge, I think is his channel, is another guy that I've learned a lot of how to cut things, how to do things cool, how to do patterns in stuff. So you can do boxes, you can do things. But like, I encourage you just to take something, whatever it is, and then you could build it in wood, acrylic, so, you could do anything really. I mean, it's very simple, a lot of stuff, but putting it down, getting it down to something you want to do. I'm not saying you could build a mouse exactly, but you could do something where you can take this and that these pieces go together. If you look at it, this blue piece is different than this black piece and this, and you can just kind of take it apart in your head and do the pieces. Another tool you can look at, which is a little bit of work to learn, is Fusion 360. So Fusion 360, it's AutoCAD, it's free, and you can design in 3D. So you can do three-dimensional stuff that you can export some of the pieces as SVGs for Lightburn. Or if you have a 3D printer, you can also use any of that for 3D printing or CNCs. So it has a lot of things, and you can see it in real world, together. SketchUp is another one, but SketchUp does cost some money. So, you can use that, but to see how things go together, I mean, that's one of the things to do, prototype it, see how it looks before you actually make it. But make it and iterate, see what needs to be improved. If you're selling stuff, you get feedback from your customers of what can be improved. So you just keep doing those things and keep making things better. But I like Lightburn, like I said, for all these different things that you can design in it, starting out that how it's going to go. I mean, simple things like signs, model, like I said, you can do structures like I did this one, right? So that's one thing you can do. Depending on your laser and the size, you can do a lot of different things in Lightburn. I'm trying to think of anything else I have here that I could show that might be cool. But I like to use Lightburn to come up with to do my designs, right? Let's see if I have anything else in Lightburn I could pull up that might be interesting. And like I said, you get started with those box, there's a lot of different websites that have, some of these box design tools. So you could do a lot of that and pull them in. You can also, like I said, let me pull up one that I've started, and I'm still tweaking it, but okay. I've started this one, so I need to zoom out. Let me pull up Lightburn. So this is a tackle box, a small tackle box I'm designing for fishing. And this is to be made out of wood. I took an actual tackle box I have, a plastic one, and I measured it. So these are the top and bottom, and this is the handle, if you can see it. And then over here is the sides, and this is the sides and the more pieces up here for the top. These go to the top. Now my plan is, once I make this, that I will look at how I'm going to do organization of it. So once I make it, I'll measure it and see how I can do those organization wise. This was generated, like I said, out of box .py or box designer. So it was just a box designed in there. I could do my own tabs too, but this was quicker to get it up and running. And you can see that this is just a simple thing. I'm going to do a tackle box. Like I said, I may put a tray in there. I may try and see how I can engineer. Like a lot of them have the trays at the top that move when you open, they move out of the way, things like that. So there's ways to do that, to get the right screws, get the right pieces to do that, right? So that shouldn't be too hard because I have a tackle box. I can look at how they did it and engineer that the way I want. And there's a lot of possibilities there. So let's see, is there anything else I might bring up? Because these most of my stuff is going to be different things. So we won't bring up those necessarily. Let me look if there's anything from before. A lot of boxes are fun, like I said, and then you can design all sorts of things in Lightburn and modify it, right? So this is more like, let's modify, let's do some things, and so hopefully you enjoyed this quick, just kind of talking philosophically about using Lightburn and other things to develop these products, and another thing, and you can see a lot of these guys also go to stores and look at what's selling, what's good, and then they try to that's when you talk about re-engineering, right? You see. And this can be done in your laser, CNC, whatever. You find the product or a product in the store, and you make it. Maybe it's out of plastic, you make it out of wood. Maybe it's wood, you make it out of plastic. Something, and then you can sell that. You can customize it, sell it, things like that. So that's how you would reverse engineer, or you can just design, something from scratch. It's a little bit harder to design something from scratch. It's easier to take something and modify it, and that's what I usually do. So I would encourage you to do that. Learn Lightburn. Use Lightburn if you can. If you don't have a laser that can run on Lightburn, okay, then you can do these things in Inkscape or any vector tool that you have for drawing vector shapes, and that, like Adobe Illustrator. I think there's others like Coral Draw or something like that can be used. But do try these things, and just learn, just keep learning, and that's what I would say. Just use Lightburn, learn Lightburn, use these techniques. I have several other things that I've work on, but it's like I get an idea. The great thing about, if I want to do a shelf and I only have a certain certain amount of space, I can do that in Lightburn, customize it, size it, measure it, and size it. So that's the beauty of lasers and being able to make things custom to what I need. And you can do that, custom things to the sizes that you want. Maybe you see something but you think it should be bigger or smaller, and you want to make that, sell that or whatever, make that for yourself. So I encourage you to do those things. I encourage you to like this video, share the video, and also subscribe, follow this channel. I hope you enjoyed this quick look at my process or my ideas of how I go about figuring out and doing things, and using Lightburn as well. And I think you should use Lightburn as much as you can for doing stuff. You could even use Lightburn probably if you don't even have Lightburn if it doesn't work with your laser, because you can always export it as SVG. You can export it in different Adobe Illustrator, other ways you can export. So you can do some drawing stuff in Lightburn, but of course maybe you don't want to pay for the license, but you can also do the free trial. So with that, thank you for watching again, and remember to never stop learning.